right, welcome back to Sports Around the Bar, where we finally got the tech figured out. Only like an hour late, like a half hour late, like we always are.
It's fine. It's not a big deal at all.
So as we were saying, I know everybody's coming back in, and we thank you guys so much for your patience, because again, this is the first time we're actually live streaming on both YouTube and Facebook. Kind of a big deal for us, at least concurrently.
No, it's huge.
We'll see how it goes. We used to do it with like two cameras, and we'd have them both kind of pointed at weird angles, and everything looked weird. Didn't really like that, but we kind of splurged a little bit. We finally got the good camera. We really want to use it. We're not really trying to get like a bad webcam and have that as, you know, someone's got to take the fall and watch on bad camera. I think we finally got it figured out, Drew. 15 tries in.
Yeah. Sorry about all the live notifications.
Yeah, especially for YouTube folks. So you probably got like 12 of those. Apologize again. But at least right now, it's working. Let's get right into it, man. We're talking about some of these quarterbacks. And let me say this. Let me at least kind of reiterate. If you haven't watched it, we did put out a 40-minute video talking about each and every one of these guys. A lot of these guys, it just depends on what you want. If you want to set up a Lamar Jackson-style offense where you have a very solid running quarterback that maybe he's got some accuracy issues, maybe he's not the most accurate quarterback in the league, but has a big arm and can challenge downfield as well, Malik Willis is your guy for that.
Yeah.
Sam Howell, I think, could run something similar, even though he's a little bit, like, he's not as good of an athlete.
Yeah.
But he's kind of the bridge between, like, my traditional pocket passer and my actual mobile quarterback. I'd call him, like, small Josh Allen, but that's not fair either.
Malik's kind of like a faster
big Lamar
Brian Leftwich.
I could see that. I could see that. I think another good comparison would be, like, a more athletic Jalen Hurts. Another guy that, you know, he can run, but Malik Willis is probably more physically talented than that.
Isn't he a little bit bigger, though?
Willis? He's only 6'2". He's 215, but he's only 6'2".
God,
it's not like he's giant.
He looks so much bigger in pads.
He definitely does. And he runs with some physicality. He's very good at dodging tackles. If that was the kind of offense you were going to run, that's the reason there's talk about, like, should Detroit take him at 2? Because he has a special skill that kind of separates him from the pack. And, again, it's all in how much these teams want to actually play with that kind of skill.
But as much as that quarterback style is so much fun to watch, as much as it adds seats into your stadium and tickets being sold, how many Super Bowls have they won? I mean, that style of quarterback so far has not panned out as far as winning Super Bowls in this league.
And I agree, but only one guy can win every year. You know, Lamar Jackson's been in the league 5 years now. It's not like I'm going to point and say, oh, well, let's throw that out. He's terrible. This will be his 5th year. So,
but, I mean, can you throw Josh Allen in that too? He hasn't won one.
Sure, I think
Michael Vick, he didn't win one.
Yeah.
I mean, I can keep going down the list. Randall Cunningham didn't win one. Steve Young.
Point taken. All right. I agree. It's a skill set that hasn't really panned out, but does that mean it can't win? Again, only one guy can win every year. And just because there's not a ton of these running quarterbacks that have had a ton of success, does that mean you don't want to bet on it? I don't know. It's something the Lions have to figure out, and as well as everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil, good to see you, man. It's going great. Besides our tech.
Yeah, the tech has been on the downslide, but at the very least, we're kind of bouncing back. We got everything else sort of figured out. I still having a hard time seeing all the comments everywhere, so I'm leaning on you for that.
I got it. I got it taken care of.
Let me say this, at least at quarterback, too.
Yeah.
1,000,000%, the Carolina Panthers are going to be taking a quarterback at 6.
They have to be.
They don't have a second-round pick. They don't have a third-round pick. And all the rumors right now are that they love Kenny Pickett because Matt Rule recruited him in college when he was at Temple. Obviously, it didn't work out. Pickett wound up decommitting and going to Pitt when he got the job at Baylor right before he was supposed to go to Temple. But if there was like a safe bet in this draft, it would be to put that Carolina is going to try to get Pickett at 6.
That's probably where I put my money at, but it's interesting when you've seen that in the past where quarterbacks come from college, or when coaches come from college into the pros and they have some of those players that they can go out and get from their former team. They actually normally don't. They actually usually don't go get them.
Urban Meyer notedly took a bunch of Clemson players
How
as
well
soon as
that
he got
worked.
there.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah, so let's never
I
do
thought
that
you were going the opposite there.
No.
Yeah, normally they don't, though, which is kind of surprising.
At least Jacksonville moved off Urban Meyer pretty quick. Yes. But let me ask you this. Another thing I think that's going to happen, and then we'll move on from quarterbacks. We'll start talking about some running backs. But another thing I think that's going to happen, and I really want you guys to keep an eye out for this. The Saints went and picked up that extra first-round pick. Are they loading up to try to jump Carolina, noted division rival? Are they loading up to try to trade with the Giants at number 5? Because that's what it feels like.
It does feel that way, doesn't it? It's hard to say. I mean, maybe. Is it? What are they aiming for?
It's got to be Pickett. Like, if you're not worried about them taking Kenny Pickett, if that's the guy that's not the guy that you want, you don't do this. At least not till draft day. You're going to get a better deal on draft day when everybody's on the clock and there's that time pressure to make a deal happen than you are a month ahead of time, like when they actually made this deal happen.
But we can't be the only ones that are out there going, these quarterbacks don't seem like they're the best. I mean, they have to hear that. They have to look at the film and go, we've seen better, right?
I hope they're hearing it from their scouting group.
That's what I'm saying. Department. They had to at some point. Maybe. It's a good possibility. Neil says, Drew, Brady has one with another team now before Mahomes could get his second. He says he had to rub it in. Yeah.
My team still has 0 as a franchise, so.
You're right.
Sucks to suck, I guess.
How's those Patriots working out for you, huh?
Martavius says, although Atlanta needs to go edge, he says he gets the feeling they're going for Willis. I don't, because the reason I think, and the reason I think that is because they gave Marcus Mariota a 2-year contract. It's a little weird. It's kind of like, you're going to be our bridge quarterback. We're not going to take a guy this year, but we want to keep you next year in case the guy that we draft next year isn't ready to go. I think Atlanta's playing the long game, too. I think they looked at these guys and said, Arthur Smith said, I'm not staking my job and the rest of my tenure here in Atlanta on picking the wrong quarterback in 2022. I'll wait till 2023 and we'll build this team up. Edge would be great for Atlanta, but just about every position right now I would say would be great for Atlanta.
I think he's had conversations with the ownership and with Arthur as well, Arthur Blank, and, you know, he's probably had that. He said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get in somebody I'm familiar with, kind of get my offense rolling, and then move forward and see if someone falls the draft to us. Maybe I'll take him, but I promise you right now he's not going to be our franchise quarterback. That would be my guess. That's the conversation I would have if I was Arthur Smith talking to Arthur Blank.
And if I was Arthur Blank, the way I'd answer back is, if he's not going to be our future quarterback, if you're talking about Mariota, that's fine. But if you're talking about drafting a guy still somewhere in here, is this a second-round shot? Is it a third-round shot that we take at quarterback if one of these guys falls? Because let's not forget, they're going to have that. They have Tennessee's second-round pick as well. I'm pretty sure they still have their own second-round pick, 7 or 8 picks into the second round. So you're going to have an option to make a play there, I think, at some of these quarterbacks. And the question is it okay to wait, or do they just need to pull the trigger and say, quarterback's too important?
When I say you're falling, so if you have Pickett sitting or Willis sitting at, let's just say, 24 or 32, whatever you want to call it, and your second-round pick comes and it's still sitting there and he's on top of your big board, yeah, you take him. Mm-hmm. And you take him going, this is not going to be my forever guy unless he just pans out.
Unless we hit Derek Carr.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly how it has to go down, at least in my world. Maybe it's completely different. I'm not around the millions of dollars that float those organizations, but if they're going to pay me and I'm going to draft for them, this is how I'd go at it.
And I kind of agree with that. If it's your guy and you just happen to have the shot to take him, you should absolutely take him and not look back. But I will say this, Drew. The other question I have, at least at quarterback here, is how many are we going to see come off the board in the first round? I've heard anywhere from 5 to 1. And realistically, I think Carolina has to take a quarterback. They don't have those 2 picks afterward, like I said before. And right now, is there a hotter seat in the NFL than Matt Rule with the way things have gone with the Panthers? I mean, you traded the picks away for Sam Darnold, so you're already shorthanding yourself this year. You've decided after 1 year, it seems like, that you're going out and getting another quarterback. And then, like, you win 3 games, and you decide we're going to go trade for Stephon Gilmore, who walks at the end of the season. Like, he's not there.
Right.
They've shipped off so much draft capital, and they literally have nothing to show for it, that I feel like Matt Rule, he's one mistake away from the edge, Drew.
Well, yeah, the way the NFL is today,
6-year contract or not.
It does not matter. You are on the hot seat after 1 bad season. Yeah, you're asking how many quarterbacks are drafted in the first round. I think a max of 2. I fully think a max of 2. Jeremy, good to see you. Frank, good to see you too. Glad you guys could be in. Frank says he thinks 4 quarterbacks in the first round.
Maybe teams sit and wait. Like, maybe the Saints are looking at it and saying, hey, look, we want a quarterback, and one was fall in our lap. We don't care if it's Ritter. We don't care if it's Howell. We don't care if it's Pickett. One of these guys is going to fall to us, and we'll take him. The Steelers have made it pretty clear they want Malik Willis. So I guess if he falls to that point, I guess they take him. But is Malik Willis falling to 20 with his skill set? I feel like someone is going to jump ahead of everybody and ahead of the Steelers to trade up to go get him.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but there is the whole feeling of this draft is there is no great quarterback in this draft. it's just because we've seen the last 4 or 5 years where we see, 4 or 5 quarterbacks get off the board in the first round and they're trading up. I don't feel like it has to be like that every year in and year out. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't feel that way about this year's draft.
And I can definitely understand that. Let's move on. Let's talk about a little bit of running back, because another position that I think is very top-heavy. I want to say for the most of this draft, much of what you're going to see is there's a few guys at the top of every position that are very, very good, very talented, and then after that, it gets kind of skinny. So when it comes to running back, I see 2 guys that I like. It's Kenneth Walker out of Michigan State, and I like Breece Hall out of Iowa State as well. Both of those guys, I think, have the potential to be star running backs in the league. They have burst. They have speed, especially Kenny Walker has speed. They break tackles. And most importantly to me, when I'm looking at running back, the one thing they do that's different is when you give them the crease and they find a way to get out in open space, they hit the home run and they wind up in the end zone. I think that's underrated because so few of those plays happen in the NFL that if you don't have a guy that can score when he gets that opportunity, you're leaving points on the board. You're giving the defense another chance to stop you, and that just doesn't play in the NFL. You don't leave points on the board.
No, you definitely don't. Richard, good to see you. Chris, good to see you as well. I just like to always bring this up because you were like always about this is first round running backs, regardless who they are, it's not worth it. And when I look at your list,
you're cheating off.
And when I look at your list, I see one that says late first round. Do you believe Walker is a first round running back in the right position? I mean, it's always right.
So I've come around a little bit in the sense of if you have a special guy in the draft, you just take him. It doesn't matter what position he plays because positional value is great. You can talk about how receivers and corners and edge rushers are worth more than linebackers and guards. But if you have a guy that is truly better than everybody else at the position, you just take him because special players are what get you to the Super Bowl and what help you win. And when I look at Kenny Walker, Kenneth Walker, whichever you prefer, I see a special running back. I don't think Michigan State beats Michigan this year without Kenny Walker. That dude was a beast in that game. If you want to go back and watch a clinic, there was no reason Michigan State should have won that game. And Kenny Walker was literally slipping tackles left and right and just it was one of the best running performances in the 2021 season in college for sure. So when I talk about Kenny Walker, the reason I have a late first-round grade on him, I think he's special, Drew. And I like Breece Hall. He's number 2 on my list. But when you're talking about Kenny Walker, I would take if it comes around to pick 27, 28, 29, and I don't have a solid running game, I will take a guy like Kenny Walker because of the upside that he provides. It's like getting a Dalvin Cook. It's like getting a Derrick Henry. I don't want to say that he's definitely going to be that. But if you have a chance to hit on a guy like that, I would spend a first-round pick on that every day of the week.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to be a Derrick Henry. I mean...
Well, he definitely doesn't have the running style like that. I don't want to give you the impression that that's what it is. But I'm saying if you have a guy that can break the game, spending if you feel that confident about it, I think you should spend the first-round pick regardless of the position, and that's where I see Kenny Walker. I see him being a guy that is going to be a Dalvin Cook-style difference maker at running back. And if you could take Dalvin Cook right now, fresh Dalvin Cook, fresh out of college, at pick 28, would you do it?
Yeah, if it was a need. That's what Frank says, but who needs a running back?
If it wasn't a need, I'd do it. Because, one, it keeps everyone else from having him.
It's true.
And, 2, you can always rotate running backs.
Yeah.
That's allowed. Teams do that these days.
Frank says, who needs a running back? I actually think quite a few teams do. If even my team, Kansas City, if the need wasn't so present somewhere else on the field, like receiver, corner, edge rusher, I would not be surprised if Kansas City took a running back just because you always need those players there.
They won't do it because they don't have a second-round pick, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Titans did after the injury to Derrick Henry, just because it's so much of their team identity. They're like, hey, we run the ball.
Or Carolina.
McCaffrey's been out. If they had a second-round pick, I'd say do it.
Absolutely.
If they take Kenny Walker at 6, fire bat rule right now, just because there's so many other great players in this draft. But
it'd be pretty crazy.
I mean, I say that, but I actually feel like this draft is kind of weak. But yeah, no, you can't take a running back at 6. There's a difference between 6 and 26. So,
do you want to hit some of these comments while I go grab another beer?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just switch to the right page. I'm still trying to manage all of that, but
yeah, sure.
By all means.
Thomas, good to see you, man. Yeah, we're going to be live for a couple more minutes for sure. And then what Richard says, dang, Drew, you're looking too young to have
that beer in your hands.
Two beer hands. That's hilarious.
I remember the old days where I used to get that. Now I'm fat, out of shape, and stupid. So everyone's like, yeah, no, he looks like he belongs. He's in the right spot.
I am definitely the oldest of the two here.
Going on, Richard also says Kansas City will pick a DB or a safety. I think that's a safe pick. And, nobody was necessarily advocating that Kansas City needs to take a running back with that first pick. They kind of already made that play with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I know it hasn't worked out to this point. But I'll say this, at least at Kansas City. You're very likely to see a corner come off the board. You're very likely to see a receiver as well, just because I don't know how solid they feel about Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS as well. They're going to have to make some plays. They're going to have to get some value out of the first round, and they're going to be guys who need to make an impact right away. So I think the Chiefs are probably going to go in that route. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Especially when you consider how thin positions like corner are in this draft, where there's some guys up at the top. There's like 5 corners that I really like, and everybody else is kind of just another guy that you're taking a shot on after that. So very interesting to see what they do. I agree with you. They're going to be interested in those spots, but I think receiver is another one that you probably could have mentioned there too.
Oh, I don't think they're taking running back. I was just throwing a point out there that.
Oh no, yeah, that was a comment. You're good.
No, I know. Just throwing that. Martavius says he would like to see Ritter in the second round, but can hold out until next year for Young. Stroud.
Bryce Young out of Alabama. Yeah.
Okay. This is Stroud.
Ohio State.
Stroud. I have Radler as a potential pick, as well as hopefully his stock improves.
Well, Spencer Radler has to recover. Like, we haven't seen a meteoric fall like that. Like, so if you remember, Drew, I was complaining when Justin Herbert went back to college.
Hold on, you complained?
I know it's hard to pick it out, but try to remember here.
Okay.
I complained when Justin Herbert went back to college when he was going to be the number 1 pick. He wound up dropping to 5. I complained when Jake Locker was going to be the number 1 pick. He went back to school at Washington, and he wound up dropping to number 9. I think Spencer Rattler has been the biggest example of a guy, I know he wasn't eligible to come out, that we've seen as like a potential number 1 quarterback that has like spiraled from his position. And now he's had to leave Oklahoma. He didn't follow Lincoln Riley out to USC either. He had to go to the other USC, South Carolina. I don't see him bouncing back. I think this is going to be something that he's going to probably wind up being a 4th or a 5th round quarterback, because now, look, if you can't get it done at Oklahoma with that offensive powerhouse and the defenses that are in the Big 12, you're not going to go to the SEC and just own everybody. It's not going to happen. So
you don't know that. No,
I don't. And you're right. I mean, I'm speaking in certainties. Nothing is guaranteed in this game is one thing I've learned. But let me just say, if I had to put some money down, I would bet on him not really bouncing back that well. So he's a guy that I don't like. As far as the other two, Bryce Young is like the odds-on favorite to be the first quarterback off the board. He seems like a great prospect. C.J. Stroud is a little bit more question marks about him, but he'll probably be right up there because Ohio State's going to win a bunch of games. At the very least, when it comes to Desmond Ridder and the Falcons taking Desmond Ridder, let me say this, Martavius. You already have that guy. And you have a better version of him in Marcus Mariota. And you're already looking at it like we probably don't want this guy long-term. I don't want to go too hard on guys because we haven't seen him play it down in the NFL yet. But he's got accuracy issues. He played a low level of competition. He's not a talented runner, even though he's very fast.
My mind is so blown that you just gave props to Marcus Mariota.
That's not a prop. I'm saying the reverse. Like, that's a bad thing. He's a worse Desmond Ridder is a worse version of Marcus Mariota.
Oh, so yeah, you did give him props. You upped Marcus Mariota a little bit.
Comparatively, I guess. Yeah, yeah. But he's definitely not a guy that you want to go lean into. In my opinion, that's why I had him as number 5. I feel like he is very much the same. Because when Mariota came out, they're like, he's so fast, but he's not a natural runner. He doesn't really seem to make good use of his legs. But we didn't have these accuracy concerns with Mariota. He wound up developing that. He wound up taking a little bit of nerve damage in his right hand, in his throwing hand. It was actually his elbow. But I see Desmond Ridder as a problem. And again, just because Cincinnati beat up on some bad competition, this is like 2 steps up. If teams from the SEC and the Big 10 and the Big 12 are taking 1 step up into the NFL, a team like Cincinnati is like multiple steps up from where we're seeing that. And I think he's going to struggle.
We got a couple more comments, or do you want to move on with
comments are fine.
Okay.
Comments are fine.
Okay. Richard says Juju will be solid in KC. Yeah, I think it'll be solid. I think it'll be solid, probably top end number 2. I still think we need a game breaker. I don't feel like he is, and I'm not asking him to replace Hill. I just don't think he's going to be that over the top speedster. That's kind of why we went out and got Valdez Scantling. But solid, yes, but that doesn't mean he's going to be what we need. I still think a receiver is going to be a top round draft pick out of Kansas City. If not, I have questions. I have questions. Thomas, I appreciate all the comments, man. I appreciate them all. He goes,
it's like he's hanging out with Robert Kraft in here and everything.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what's going on.
He says, what are the odds of Tennessee getting rid of Henry this year for draft picks? Is it coming?
Frosty Friday in Hades. We already talked about that. It won't happen. We love running the ball too much here in Tennessee. It's national pastime.
Living here in Nashville and not even being a Titans fan, it is incredible the love that guy has here and in the organization. He's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Correct. And while I would like to see them get a second running back, literally you're playing second fiddle to Henry. I think this is going to be 100% Henry as soon as he comes back. Someone was asking about Martavius Hill, saying Philly should move up to go get him. I think Philadelphia is an interesting spot. Frank said that. Thank you.
Okay.
I think Philadelphia's in an interesting spot because they have these picks. They've already kicked the can down the road by getting another pick from the Saints next year. Is that an indictment of Jalen Hurts where they're saying, look, we want the quarterback and we don't see it? Or is this just Philly playing the more is better when it comes to draft picks in the NFL?
I was wrong. He said moved up to get the Oregon defensive end.
That is Thibodeau.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. I might have misspoke.
It's there. You don't like the idea of them moving up to go get a defensive end? I think Philly will always be good with more defensive ends. The way that they play ball up there, and I know it's been different coaches and different schemes and all that stuff, but when you think about Philly being...
It's definitely their style.
Yeah, if you think about Philly being a great organization in the NFL, it's rotating massive defensive ends consistently.
But let me say this. I have 12 defensive ends. If there is a position that's deep in this draft, it's defensive end. Linebacker is close because linebacker is also a pretty good class.
But what if you fall in love with somebody like Thibodeau?
Then I wait and I take another guy that I also love because he's a size, speed kind of prospect that we're seeing in the draft. I mean, Thibodeau I think is great. He's actually the number one player on my draft board. And the fact that he is dropping in this, I think he's great. Now, I respect the character concerns. And there's questions of, like, does he love football? Is he going to be a 12-year starter when things start to get difficult?
That is serious questions. Look at Josh Rosen.
Yes, but Josh Rosen was, like, richer than most of the owners in the NFL when he came into the NFL, or he was due to inherit it. A little bit different with Thibodeau.
True.
Those are definitely fair concerns, and I see them. But I'll say this. Because I don't have access to this information, all I can look at is what I project the guy to be from a talent level. And he has the highest projection out of any one of these guys, at least maybe except for Trayvon Walker. I think he has the highest ceiling out of any of these edge rushers. So yeah, if you could make a decent trade to go get him at like 12, I'd see it for Philly. You just can't go top 10 to go get an edge rusher. I think it would be better to stand pat and go take a guy like Jermaine Johnson, Trayvon Walker if he falls that far, George Karlaftis if he falls that far. I mean, the list goes on. Drake Jackson, David Ajabo, Josh Paschal, Nick Bonito. There are so many guys in this draft that you would be better off waiting to take than it would be to trade multiple picks away to jump 10 spots in the draft to go get one guy.
Yeah, because you're definitely going to have to give up a lot of draft capital this year and probably next year to move up that far to get a defensive end. But I'm going to say this. It's as much as I would not want my team to do it, if a team falls in love with somebody, they're going to do it. They're going to do it.
I could get more on board if there was like one somebody. If you're looking at it like this is the guy in the class that we have to have.
But they might feel that way.
And I could see that at corner. Like corner 1,000,000% is that way. But I don't see how you look at this edge class and you're like, there's no way that guy could be successful with us. There's so many guys that it's like, okay, maybe I don't like Nick Bonito because he's small. Maybe I don't like Josh Paschal because he's kind of like that between D tackle and D end kind of thing.
So I know it's a different position. Obviously, we're talking about defensive end. I'm going to talk about quarterback. And obviously, I'm going to always bring up Kansas City because that's what I'm most familiar with. But you know, when Kansas City gave up draft picks to move up to get Mahomes, there's tons of other quarterbacks there being taken. But Kansas City fell in love with Mahomes. Well, Andy Reid and Brett Veach did, but Kansas City didn't know him yet. So that's the thing is, and I know it's two different positions, and that's probably what you're going to bring up first because I would.
But if you could have had Deshaun, okay, so we know more about Deshaun Watson now, and obviously the answer might change. But back then, if you're saying, obviously quarterback's different, but you still had another very talented guy in Deshaun Watson sitting there.
Right.
That, again, if you could have waited to take a Deshaun Watson, you still take the Mahomes because quarterback's so important. Edge rusher, is the gap that big? And that's my question. If you could have Joey Bosa, or you could sit back and take, what's a good example of a very solid edge? A Brian Burns?
Yeah.
Would you be happy with Brian Burns? Because I think I would probably sit back and not make that trade and go get another player. And Brian Burns and another player is worth more than Joey Bosa by himself. As much as I love Joey Bosa.
Agreed.
And that's why I'm probably saying Philadelphia should sit still instead of trading up to get a Thibodeau, unless he falls to like 12, 13, 14, and you get the deal to trade up and get him.
Agreed. So all said and done, I think we both kind of agree moving up 10 spots to number 5 or wherever to get Thibodeau is way too much for Philly to do.
He's going to drop, though.
But at the same time,
yeah,
we've seen crazier things.
He's going to drop. Like, if there's a guy that, he's going to drop. The fact that he goes in and I heard a soundbite where somebody asked him, what is the number one thing a coach could show you in the NFL to make your game better? And he goes, oh, there's nothing anyone can show me. As soon as I heard that, I was like, ah! So, yeah, he's not doing himself any favors, Drew. He's probably going to drop. But the question is how far. There's no way he gets past 15.
No.
This was supposed to be the number one guy in the draft. There's no way he's going to fall. Somebody at 13 is going, whether it's Houston at 13, whether it's Washington, somebody's going to say there's just too much talent. I'll roll the dice.
Well, don't worry, because Richard said the Jags will draft Cameron Dicker, the punter out of Texas, with their first pick. So
I'd love to see it.
We don't have to worry about that pick, so he's going to fall past them.
Can we talk about the Jaguars for a second?
Yeah. Frank, thank you so much, man. We're glad you're here for your third year with us. We really appreciate the great comment.
Has it been that? The time's just flying by, Frank. It feels like it was just yesterday, man. So good to see you guys. Good to see everybody in here. The Jaguars, because for months now, Drew, it's been Aiden Hutchinson. After the year he had in college, even I was like, I don't know how you turn off that safe thing and say, I'll just take the guy that I know is going to be good. And best case scenario, I drafted J.J. Watt. Worst case scenario, I drafted a very solid power rushing defensive end.
Love the motor of this young man.
But now it's coming out. The odds makers today said it's Trayvon Walker. It's going to be the guy out of Georgia who, physical freak, Drew, the workout warrior himself, only had, I think, 6 sacks at Georgia. Is Jacksonville going to make another move?
It's
hard. It's impossible predicting what Jacksonville's going to do.
I don't want to predict anything, but they do fall in love with the physicality of people. They fall in love with body builds and stuff like that instead of going for that solid, player. And we already brought up Brian Burns, talk about a motor. That's kind of what Hutchinson kind of reminds me of, maybe a little bit more talent, if I could talk. I like this young guy. I don't know if he's worth the number one pick in the draft. I don't know that because
I know he isn't. If you're talking about Trayvon Walker, I mean.
Oh, I was talking about Hutchinson.
Hutchinson, yeah. Okay, well, this draft, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll give you this. I think you're right. He's not Joey Bosa when he came out, where you're like, this is a slam dunk. I know I'm getting a great edge rusher.
Right. Wow.
He's not Nick Bosa when he came out. He's not Chase Young. He's not. Yeah. I don't think he's that caliber of a talent. But I will say this about. Now I'm blanking on his name. Whoever we were talking about, Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah. I don't know why it's so hard for me to talk about him, but I will say this about him: the floor is there. Yes. To where when you take him at number one, you're not gonna strike out. You don't have to go to your boss and be like, "Hey, listen, we messed up."
Unless some injury, but yeah.
Even with injury. Okay, injury, though, you can forgive because that could happen to anybody, you know? But at least when you look at Aiden Hutchinson, I know that he's going to be a good NFL player. I think he can be a great NFL player, but I know he's going to be a good NFL player. I don't have to worry about going to my boss and saying, hey, listen, we struck out again at number one. I not to say that Trevor Lawrence is a strikeout. I'm not trying to say that. But what I am trying to say is that is a hard sell. There's not many guys that can survive that kind of mea culpa where you have to go and say, listen, that was just our bad and we messed up, and we could have had anybody in this draft and we got the wrong guy.
Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah, at least he was 4 or whatever. He wasn't number one, was he? Was he 3 or 4?
One.
Was he? I don't remember. I thought he was 3 or 4.
I'm pretty sure he's number one. Who knows?
Anyway, moral of the story is Jacksonville, they already did this, is my problem. They took K'Lavon Chaisson because of all the tools that he had, because he was a workout warrior. The production wasn't there at LSU for Chaisson. And guess what? He got benched this year. He was, even though
they fell in love with the body style. They were like, "This is what we want." Not to interrupt you, Frank said he would take Neal as the number one overall. And
cheers to that, because he's my number one offensive tackle.
And the other Frank, he says the Jags need to trade back for more picks. And Frank, I'm just going to start numbering you guys. Frank number 2 says, "Yep."
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, though. Who's trading up to number 1 to get anybody? Because normally you see that for a quarterback. And obviously that guy's not here today.
It's not happening.
And if it was, and I wanted to trade up to jump the Panthers, I have 5 other teams, or 4, I suppose, that aren't taking one, right?
Right.
We know Houston's probably not going to take one with as bad as the team is. Maybe they do. We know Detroit's probably not going to take one. They've made it pretty clear that they're not super interested in it this year.
Right.
And then you get to fourth. The Jets aren't going to replace Zach Wilson after one because, again, you can't go to your owner and be like, listen, boss, we had the number 2 pick. Turns out the guy's a bum. Let's go draft again. The only team to ever do that is Arizona. And guess what happened? The coach got fired between those years, and it was a new coach who was able to come in and make that happen. So I think if the Jags wanted to trade out of that pick, it's tough luck this year because there's nobody to make that trade up. You have to have both sides of the equation. And if I want a guy, I'll trade with the Jets, I'll trade with the Texans, I'll trade with the Lions before I trade with the Jags because it's going to cost less.
Hey, Richard's already on the same page that I was going to be about is what's it going to cost to move up to get this number 1 pick when it's not going to be a quarterback-driven draft? You know, obviously when it's a quarterback, you're talking multiple first-round picks plus lower-round picks. And who knows what else, maybe a player or two involved. Richard says if he wanted to move up, he would give Jacksonville 2 number 1s for this year and next year and a 3rd and 4th, I'm assuming also with this year or maybe next year.
And that's probably what it would cost if you're probably moving from the teens up to number 1. But let me ask you this. Who are you moving up and you're giving up all that capital? Think about it. Those could be 10-year careers. Each one of those picks that you're shipping off, who are you going to take that's going to make it worth that?
So hard to replace, too.
And almost always you're saying, I'm getting the quarterback. And this year, if you fell in love with that guy, if there was one guy that you could look at like a Malik Willis and you said, listen, he's special, he's going to be the next great quarterback in the NFL, I would say maybe hold your nose and do it. But listen, I don't see it. Not this year anyway.
Frank says that he gets what we're saying, but Jacksonville has a lot of needs.
Well, you can want to trade out, but nobody's going to give it to you is the problem. What I mean, would you take like maybe someone would trade up if you just gave them a 6th-round pick? Like we swap first and you give me your 6th?
I mean,
but yeah somebody would probably do that. But again, Jacksonville is not going to get the value. And because then you got to go to your owner and say, listen, I traded out. I didn't get a whole lot for it. So yeah.
Khan would be calling and firing on the spot.
Absolutely. Let's talk about another position, receiver. Because this is one of those ones that like everybody loves a different guy. And I will say, when it comes to depth, I don't think there's a lot of depth at a lot of positions. I think edge rusher has good depth. I think linebacker has good depth. And I think receiver has good depth. But the difference is, edge rusher has some top guys. Linebacker has some top guys. I look at receiver, all these guys look like number 2s, Drew. And I don't see a Jamar Chase. I don't see a Devontae Smith or a Jalen Waddle. I don't see a Jerry Jeudy. I don't see a CeeDee Lamb. I don't see a guy that you can hang your hat on and say, he's going to be a number 1 receiver for this team if I take him in the top 10. I like all these guys is the crazy thing. I like them. I just don't think they're going to be the guy that is going to take over in defense and say, we have to stop him at all costs. He's not Jamar Chase.
Yeah, but Jamar Chase wasn't Jamar Chase until after.
He kind of was.
Not really.
We loved Jamar. I loved Jamar Chase coming out. I know you liked him too.
I did. But what I'm saying is, all these, I mean, you can have a name without having a name and being talented. Does that make sense? Like, your talent isn't always going to scheme over in the NFL. So when we look at these players, and I'm not disagreeing with you, I'll agree. Not one stands out. There's a couple that people keep bringing up that don't really excite me. We actually have not talked about this. And Drake London out of USC, he reminds me of a slower and not as good Mike Evans. And I know Mike Evans is a great receiver in this league.
I like that comp too, and I've seen it a lot, and I feel like that's probably the best one for him.
But he's not as good. Maybe he will be.
I think the broken ankle slowed him down a little bit. I think maybe if he'd been able to finish the last 8 games at USC, maybe we'd be talking about him a little bit higher in this class because I know everyone compares him to Mike Evans. Another guy I think I compare him to is Michael Thomas, where in short distance, I think this guy is going to be unstoppable. I think he has good burst. Like, he gets up to speed well enough that he can kind of make up for the fact that the top speed isn't there. And, like, this is the guy that you don't want your small corner having to tackle after he catches a slant. I think he could feast in that kind of role for a lot of teams. The question is going to be, are teams going to be able to rely on that, number 1? And number 2, are you going to accept a guy that probably isn't going to be a down-the-field receiver in the early part of the draft? Almost everybody wants speed. I'm baptizing the entire set here, and I apologize for that. I spit everywhere if you couldn't see it on the camera. Almost everybody wants speed because they saw what the Chiefs were able to do it. I feel like the Chiefs were the first team, at least in the past couple of years, that really have leaned on, hey, when we have that guy that is just that much faster than you, there is almost no defense against it. And I think teams are going to look at that, and maybe he drops because he doesn't have that attribute.
I guess I made Frank spit his beer when I said it's slower Mike Evans.
Yeah. It does. You think it doesn't get much slower, but Drake London does strike me as very much so a slower Mike Evans kind of character.
And maybe he'll be faster. Who knows? I don't know.
We've seen him run the 40. Well, we haven't seen him run the 40, I should say, because he was injured, but we've seen him on tape, and we know that he's probably not beating Mike Evans in the 40 time.
Frank says, Frank 2, or Frank 1, I forgot which number I gave. Frank says the Bears need Ohio State's receiver.
Which one? Because there's Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and you have
Fields knows.
Guys Fields knows. So Justin Fields, their quarterback, they're saying they need to get guys that he knows.
Oh, I see.
The question is, do they fall to them in, 38, 39 that the Bears have? They have a second-round pick. Obviously, they gave up the first to get Justin Fields last year. I wouldn't hate to see them land a guy like Chris Olave if he winds up dropping that far. But here's the problem. I could see the Chiefs doubling up on receiver. Everyone's saying that I'm crazy for that, but if the corners aren't there, and there's two good receivers, it wouldn't shock me if the Chiefs were like, listen, we lost Tyreek Hill, but we're going to have 3 to 4 receivers that you guys can't stop and Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
That's the new way we win.
Right. And, a lot of people are saying, no, the Chiefs are going to take defensive end, but I don't see it. They just redid, Frank's contract. So, and we haven't always had a solid on the other side. So what difference does it make at this point? We've been very known to take late draft picks at defensive end and put them in and make them play all year long and then ship them off somewhere else. So, yeah, I agree with you. If the corner does not fall, I could see double down on receivers.
I think the Chiefs have this running bet of how little can we give Steve Spagnuolo before the defense absolutely craters out. So it would not surprise me if they're let's go take some other things and let's just see what Steve does. He always seems like he figures it out.
Did you not get that email?
I know. It's just this running gag with the Chiefs that it doesn't seem to matter what they give Spagnuolo. He always seems to find a way to at least get the defense competent. And that's when you have a guy like Mahomes, that's all you need for the Chiefs. At the very least, let me say this. You have the Chiefs, just to finish my point, that are receiver needy. You have Green Bay that is about as receiver needy as I've ever seen a team be.
Talking about a team that might double down.
The Titans could take a receiver. The Bills could take a receiver.
They should.
Tampa probably won't because they signed Russell Gage. I think they're in good enough shape. They probably won't take one unless, by some miracle, a guy falls to them that they love. But there's so many teams right before the Bears get to pick a receiver. There might be 6 or 7 guys off the board. There probably won't be that Ohio State guy there for them to take to match with Fields.
It would be dumb for the Bucs to do it. Brady historically has not done well with rookie wide receivers, so I don't think that's going to happen. I'm kind of agreeing with you.
And they've taken guys like Tyler Johnson, that, again, another guy that I was like,
I love Tyler Johnson.
And it just, now he's barely on the roster.
Yeah,
I think he's still there, but you've never heard or seen him.
Okay, so you said that none of these guys that you're super in love with, but you can kind of see it. Who is your number one? Who do you have at number one, and why is he at your number one, and what team do you feel like he's going to take, or what team's going to take him?
I think my number one guy, I don't have to think about this because it's, I've already put the big board together, but my number one guy is Jameson Williams, and I think he's probably going to fall somewhere around, I would say maybe the Jets' second pick might be the first receiver we see. Maybe Atlanta because they're so desperate for a receiver with Calvin Ridley being suspended.
I like this because he's coming out of Alabama. So everyone's like, well, he's kind of already ran in a professional style offense. Keep going.
And he has a torn ACL, so he might be one of those guys that's a fringe to actually start the season off. But when you're drafting one of these guys, you're drafting for a 10 to 12-year career. You're not drafting for the first 4 weeks of his rookie season. So that wouldn't scare me at all from taking a guy like Jameson Williams. And the thing that I like about him most, the attribute that I think separates him from a lot of these other guys, is that he's not only fast, but he deals with speed better than other guys do. You can have great straight line speed. One of the things that's the most devastating and the most impossible to stop is when you can change direction and keep your speed, and you can basically keep your speed, changing your angle or your direction of attack. When it comes to a guy like Jameson Williams, I don't think anyone in this class does that as well as him. He stays fast as he makes a break on a route, and that is so hard to cover that I think that is what's going to generate separation. He's going to be a guy that ultimately, at the end of the day, he can run the deep routes. Every fast receiver, it seems like, gets compared to Tyreek Hill, and I don't think that's a fair comparison. But one thing that Hill does is that separates him from other fast receivers, guys like Ted Ginn, is when he's making those cuts, he stays fast. The speed doesn't drop off that fast. And I see a little bit of that in Jameson Williams. Not to the Tyreek Hill degree. Because, again, the lazy thing to do, the lazy analyst thing to do is to say, this guy's fast. He's just like Tyreek Hill. But I see a little bit of his game in there. And I guess I'm taking the lazy analyst route, and I'm saying, I see a little bit of that kind of strength that Hill has in this guy as well, and I don't see that in a lot of other guys like Drake London, guys like Chris Olave, guys like Garrett Wilson. I don't see quite that same change of speed that a guy like Jameson Williams has.
Sorry, can't clear my throat. Richard said, rather than get Debo for 2 number ones and a second and 2 third rounders, a player over drafting a wide receiver this year. So would you rather give up all that draft capital and pick up someone like Debo or draft her?
Love me some Debo Samuel, and at the very least you're buying a sure thing, but no, I'm just not doing it. I don't think any player outside of a quarterback is worth 2 first-round picks. Look at Seattle suffering for having traded for Jamal Adams.
Brandon Cooks has been traded multiple times first-round picks.
But not for multiple first-round picks is my point.
Sure. What about a team like Kansas City? They got 2 first-round picks.
I'm not giving them both up for anyone.
I mean, I'm just asking.
Well, actually, hold on. Let me think about that, because if I could get A.J. Brown for those 2 first-round picks, like, you're winning the Super Bowl. Like, if you put A.J. Brown and Patrick Mahomes
What about Samuel, though? I mean, if you throw him in there.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. That's kind of my point here. Like, hold on, let me pump the brakes for a second. So if I'm not the Chiefs, I probably don't trade that. If I don't have the quarterback that I know is that good, maybe I don't give that up. Like, if I was the Dolphins, I don't think I'm giving all that up for Tyreek. No disrespect. I think he's a great receiver. That is just a lot. That if he takes an injury...
What's a lot?
If he takes an injury, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be going to your boss like, man, we had some bad luck. Okay, we had some bad luck, and now we have no draft picks here in the next 2 years. The guy that we got for it isn't actually playing. You talk about putting your eggs all in one basket.
Well, as a Chiefs fan, I'm going to tell them right now, don't expect Tyreek out there for 16 games. It's not going to happen.
And the older he gets, the more that's going to increase, I think. So I agree with you on that. But what would I do? I would probably, for most teams, say take the receiver, gamble twice if you need to, and you're the Jets. They won't do it, but I mean, it can't hurt you. Corey Davis is a legitimate number 2. I think you just need a number 1, and unfortunately, that's not here.
Frank's got a couple questions here. The first one is, does Kansas City flop on another first-round running back? And then, is Williams D-Jack 2.0?
Which one?
Jameson
Williams?
Yes.
Deshaun Jackson's big negative was he couldn't turn. He was fast, and he was one of the best straight-line wide receivers I think I've ever seen. That too. And, Jameson Williams had some injury problems already, so hold your breath on that one.
I guess 2.0.
I've seen a lot of that comparison, but I think he maintains speed through his breaks better than Deshaun Jackson does, which should tell you something. I think Jackson's probably the better, pure... if I needed a guy to run a go route, I'd probably still go Deshaun Jackson. I like the comparison, but I think Jameson Williams has a little bit more in the agility kind of standpoint than even a guy like Deshaun Jackson did. It's kind of a marry between Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin going back to the Eagles back in the day, where Maclin was that guy that had that change of direction speed but didn't quite have the top end, and then you had Deshaun Jackson that could just absolutely blow the doors off anybody trying to keep up with him in a foot race. So I kind of see him in between those two guys, but that type of deep threat, I could definitely see him as that.
Yeah, I agree with the first question. That's a no. Kansas City's not taking a running back. It was just a joke that not even a joke, it was just a statement that maybe a team like that would take him. I forgot the running back's name.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we talking about?
No.
The draft Kenny Walker. Kenny Walker. Listen, if the Bills take Kenny Walker at the end of the first round, I'm going to teach you to, you can just press this button right here, and now nobody can hear you.
Wait. Don't do what?
Anyway, we'll work on that. I know it's new technology. We're still working our way through that. Anyway, as far as these receivers go, I got first-round grades on 6 of these guys that I think they could realistically wind up in the first grade. Another underrated guy that I like, that a lot of people don't, Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. We've seen some flops out of North Dakota State. We didn't see a whole lot of Trey Lance. We didn't see a whole lot of Dylan Radins last year. But
this is the guy.
I don't like the fact he drops the ball as much as he does, but that is a focus and a concentration kind of thing that I feel like can be fixed. I feel like you can work with a guy, put him on the jugs machine. Guess what you're doing for the next 6 months? You're catching passes. All right? I feel like that can be fixed. But as far as everything else he has, he's tall.
Frank.
He's 6'4", 208 pounds. He has great speed, good burst as well, which I think is underrated. So he gets up to speed fast. He stays fast. And this is just a guy that, again, with his physicality and everything, I think people are lower on Christian Watson than I am. I think he's one of those guys that you're going to come maybe early day 2, maybe late day 1. This might be the Chiefs pick where they're looking at this and saying, we signed MVS, but Christian Watson's talent level might sit him down on the bench regardless of what we paid him if they wind up landing a guy like that. And Andy Reid loves speed.
It would really surprise me to pick another big receiver after years and years of small receivers. So I wouldn't mind it. I mean, what do you got him at 6'4"?
6'4", 208.
Yeah, and he's going to get thicker.
But the scary thing is, for a receiver, he doesn't catch the ball super well. He's still a little raw at that. He hasn't been a receiver for very long, I think. I think he had to switch to receiver a couple years into his college career.
Besides Kelsey and Hill, Mahomes is used to that now.
Yeah. Well, you saw Byron Pringle might be back in the market if the Bears cut him.
Yeah, it's not his fault. He's innocent until proven guilty, darn it.
Another guy I love, Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati. He's another size speed kind of project where he's 6'3", he's 213. He ran a 4.4 140, which for a guy at 6'3", pretty damn impressive, Drew. I know we're not supposed to swear, but that's warranted.
Hey, remember you got this button right here, and then you just undo it. There you go.
You can just leave that on for the whole show.
If we wouldn't have that many people watching this is just me.
Yeah, especially if there's 30 seconds of dead air. So I'm like, anyway, moving on with the rest of these guys. Listen, a lot of it's going to come down to what do you like and what are you looking for? Because I think the 2 Ohio State guys, if you're looking for route runners that have some speed to go with it, they're a little undersized. They're 183 pounds, but those are the guys that you want. And
they should be ready to roll week 1. These guys are used to high-speed offenses. I mean, this should that's the stuff that kind of scares me a little bit when you talk about like Watson coming out of North Dakota State. They are a little pass-heavy college up there, but are they really ready for like
these
that?
Days, they were not with Trey Lance.
Right.
But these days, they throw a lot more.
But, I mean, are they ready for the talent that comes in, the DBs? I mean, some of these guys are so used to running past everyone that's covering them. It's not going to happen.
What does that say right there? Right? I can't highlight it, but what does that say right there? Bullied bad competition in college. You hit the nail on the head with that, Drew. I mean, North Dakota State, we've seen guys like Carson Wentz come out of there. Obviously, We've seen a few other players. It's like the place to go when you land in the FCS. It's kind of murderer's row compared to everybody else in that when you get out of the FBS. But
I'm sorry.
I agree that exists.
Yes, I'm sorry. Frank, he was like, just 30 seconds? Really?
Fair criticism, all right? It hurts, but he's right. I can't disagree with him.
Oh, man. Well, you want to get into, what do you want? Offensive linemen, tight ends, what do we want?
I'll touch on the tight ends really quick because I know we don't have all day. They all suck, except for Trey McBride. No, I take that back. I like guys like Isaiah Likely. He's just really small for a tight end. He's like a receiver. He's only like 240 pounds. And I feel like he got up to 240 pounds for the combine. He doesn't really play at 240 pounds. You want a 228-pound tight end.
What? Hold on. There's a receiver that they're moving to tight end this year. Oh, my God. Who was it? Was it Ortega-Whiteside? Is that your boy?
Shut up.
They're moving him to tight end.
No one's going to believe me if you keep bringing up my bad picks, okay?
They are moving him to tight end. And he is the size of the guy that you just pretty much made fun of. Kind of, Likely. You said
I do like Isaiah Likely, and it's just you're going to have to set up like a really weird role. And I think Ortega-Whiteside's going to fall into that same really weird role.
It's going to happen, right? I mean,
it's Philadelphia. They don't know what they're doing at wide receiver.
How about this? Every NFL team at some point in time when they have players under contract in their roster, they are going to somehow fit them into what they're doing.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's just
with a good coach. Good coaches change the system to the players I have. Bad coaches say, this is the system, boys.
So if you take someone like Likely out of the draft, you have an idea of how you're going to use him.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, he's basically going to be a slot receiver. You're going to see him a lot like Mike Gesicki, a smaller Mike Gesicki. And I get that's worrying. That's not something I want to see. But let me say this: the speed is there.
That's my boy. Okay, don't you make fun of Mike like that. All right.
I mean, Mike plays a lot of the time in the slot,
guy's a stud.
And that's fine. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a reason they franchised him this year. I'm not. That wasn't meant to slight Mike Gesicki.
I know you were.
What that was meant to slight was Isaiah Likely is smaller than that, and likely going to have to do a lot.
I'm going to pick all the good players in the NFL and say they're my people,
yeah.
And then all the ones that
suck. In my defense, I like Jalen Reagor too. The Eagles took him. Wasn't very good.
Yeah.
Hasn't been a great 2 years. Let me finish.
I think I was going to say I liked him too. So,
like you said, more than 30 seconds. I also liked Devontae Smith. Better than the other two guys, but kind of disappointed in the first year compared to what I thought we were going to get. Could it be that the Eagles are just really bad at growing wide receivers and coaching them up? Let me answer my own question. Yes! Yes, it is.
I mean, you got Deshaun Jackson. That was decent. You got Jeremy Maclin.
That was a long time ago. And they've had coaching turnover for sure.
Yeah. No, that was
a long time ago.
I think that was all Andy Reid.
Yes. My point here being the current Eagles coaching staff does not seem to know what to do with wide receivers. They don't seem to know how to maximize that talent. So as much as I want to say, like, hey, I was just wrong, and I definitely would. If I swung and missed, I'm not afraid to say I love this guy and I struck out. I will say this. When you keep liking guys, I was a little bit lower on Rager than I was on Arcega-Whiteside. That was one of the first guys that I was like, he's going to own the short-range game. When I'm a little bit lower on a guy and he goes somewhere, usually I'm like, hey, whatever, I was wrong. When it's like 3 or 4 guys that constantly seem like they're disappointing, that's when I start looking at the coaching staff and saying they're not doing such a great job.
Yeah. It's so weird when you think about things like that, where franchises just seem to not do well in those positions because general managers have changed. Your head coach has changed. Your whole scheme has changed. But you can literally go and be like, Brown's never been good at quarterback.
Patriots have never been good at wide receiver.
Right.
I get they kept the same coach, but
right. I mean,
there's just a curse.
It's the front office. It's so weird. Maybe that's changing. Maybe that's changed in Cleveland. I mean, Baker Mayfield was
let's hope not
decent, and then there's Deshaun. Watson. We'll see what happens. But
both AFC fans, let's hope not.
But Philly has an issue with drafting receivers of late and not working out.
Absolutely. Just everything else, everybody else pretty much in this tight end class. If your name isn't Trey McBride, you're a bit of a question mark. I will say this about Trey McBride. I don't see him as necessarily a high-end athlete, but he's just a guy that's won so much at the college level. I'm going to take him. I think he's going to be an elite number 2 tight end, maybe even a number 1 tight end, kind of like Austin Hooper, where you look at him and you're like, the guy's not like physically better than everybody. He's not he's not Kyle Pitts where you're like, this guy's a freak athletically. But if you forget about him, he's going to punish you. And I see that as the same kind of guy that Trey McBride is going to be at the next level. So I think he's probably going to go somewhere in the second round. I have an early second round grade on him. I like Isaiah Likely. I like Greg Dulcich. I like Jelani Woods. After that, things get really, really skinny at tight end. So we won't dwell on that. We'll talk about a couple other things. Do we have any questions before I just breeze through the rest of these because we talked too long about quarterbacks?
I think that's a problem.
Yeah?
I don't know.
Is that our problem? Like Philly can't get wide receivers, we can't shut up. Like we can't focus on what we're doing.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Tackle.
Guys, feel free to comment and share and like. We appreciate everyone that's in. And if you guys have any questions or anything about your team, what you think your team should be doing or not doing, or what you think our opinion is of your team, please comment and let us know, and we'll give you our opinion.
When it comes to tackle, let me say this. There's 3 guys I think that are far and away better than everybody else. That's Ike Ekwonu, Charles Cross, and Evan Neal. Evan Neal I see as the best guy. He played multiple spots at the offensive line for Alabama. He bounced at both tackles. He played guard his freshman year. You're talking about versatility. He is 6'8", 340 pounds, and he moves like he's 280.
So pretty small dude.
Yeah, small dude who moves like it. He's my number 1 guy. The versatility's all there. He's a great balanced tackle of his pass blocking is good, his run blocking is good. He's the plug-and-play guy, right? Nothing to sweat. Whereas the other 2 guys are actually kind of the reverse of that. Ike Ekwonu, run blocking extraordinaire. He is just going to run dudes over in the running game. And then you have Charles Cross, who is an elite pass blocker, but hasn't really showed it in the other side. Both of those guys, I think, have the struggles on the other side, but they're so good at that part of the game that you just take them top 10 and you say, hey, look, we'll coach up the rest of it. I know I'm getting a special player in the other spot.
When I think of offensive linemen and going in the draft and who you're going to pick, there's definitely those massive kind of guys like Icky, or not Icky, I'm sorry, like Neal, and there's those players that just seem to do so well on tape, right? But then there's those players that just have that personality, that drive of offensive linemen. And again, I talk about my team. I think about Trey Smith out of Tennessee last year. This guy was a fifth-round draft pick, I think is what he was.
Sixth.
And, so many people passed on him. But when you put him in the camp and you watch this guy practice and stuff, he's just a different player. He really is. It was almost like, he was made to be a guard in the NFL. And so I think, and obviously it worked out for Kansas City, even though you can see these top 3 guys, unless you have a top 10 draft pick, you're not getting them. So now You're sitting there, you're digging deep into these players. Do they love the game? Do they have that drive? Do they have that want to be better than what they are now? This is where I think becomes the most important part of learning who these people are. I really do. And I know it sounds so funny because you think about offensive linemen, and no one knows these people's names. But your average NFL fan doesn't know every offensive lineman that's on their team.
That's a fair point. And these are the guys who win you the games.
Yes, and steal the words out of my mouth. I said this is the most important part of the game is the trenches. And
let me say this: you might not win the game if you have the best offensive line, or if your offensive line is good, but you're definitely going to lose it if they're not. So I 100% agree. Even though nobody wants to see that offensive tackle come off the first round pick, you want the sexy pick. You want the receiver. You want the running back.
Right.
Show me the quarterback. I want to see something fun. Even the edge rusher. Show me somebody who's going to have some flash.
Right.
But this is the dirty work that you just got to do as a franchise if you want to succeed. And I see a couple other guys in this class, guys like Trevor Penning, guys like Bernard Ryman. These dudes will probably wind up in the first round, I think. Even Tyler Smith, people are higher on him than I am. I have a second-round grade on him. Some people are going to see him going in the late first round as well, just because he's that nasty of a run mauler. Once you get past, 5, 6, 7 in this draft, it falls apart, Drew. So if you want to tackle this year, and most years it's kind of like this. If you want your guy, this might be the pick that we were talking about. Who do I trade up for if he's not a quarterback? This might be the spot. Maybe they go out and grab that tight end or that offensive tackle instead. Tight end. Yeah, I'm trading up to the first round to get a tight end. No.
So Neal might be the guy.
He might even be Jacksonville's guy. It wouldn't surprise me if they took him. Supposedly Doug Peterson likes Ike Ekwonu. I've been hearing that too. But again, it's kind of a flavor thing.
I think they should take him.
Yeah? You would take him for Trevor Lawrence? I mean, you spent the first overall pick on a quarterback. Why not
protect him?
Protect him, yeah.
Absolutely.
I can see it. They did draft Walker Little. Maybe not, but I'll say this. You could do worse than these guys.
Richard says, don't forget to draft a Sports Around the Bar t-shirt so you can rep the t-shirt at the draft. Richard, please. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. I'll have to figure out if our t-shirt vendor still exists. So
It's on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I
know, but I have to talk to anyway.
We'll have to make sure that works out. And then Kenneth says
the Christmas gift.
Kenneth says Rams back to the Super Bowl again this year.
Things certainly seem like they've gotten easier in the NFC, but I will say this. I think the 49ers are going to be good. I know the Debo stuff is a bit of a distraction for them. Tampa Bay will likely still be good. Green Bay, I think, will still likely be good. Everyone else, though, starts getting a little dicey.
I could almost say
Cowboys. Sorry, I didn't want to short the Cowboys fans out there. Their team's looking pretty good, too.
Cowboys, I mean,
maybe not as good, but they're still looking good.
I love their defense.
I'd like it better if they had Randy Gregory still.
I guess I have to see that how it is. I love the way their defense played last year. How they just willed the game to be theirs.
Sure. And it's the first time they've been able to do that in a long time.
A long time.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with you. Let's move on because I won't bore you with interior offensive line talk. I know a lot of people don't love that.
Well, Richard says that 60 picks is a great lineman, especially a guy that can play center and as guard.
And you know what his name is? Tyler Linderbaum. Okay? Listen, there's talk about this guy falling into the 20s. There's talk about I haven't been this excited about an interior offensive lineman since Quentin Nelson came out.
Well, he is from my team that I represent in college, and that's Iowa Hawkeyes.
And let me tell you, this is like offensive lineman now. It seems like they are just spitting out like it's a conveyor belt of just like solid,
if it's not
great offensive lineman.
And then every now and then you throw a tight end.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe two.
Exactly. And let me tell you this, as far as it goes, it's Tyler Linderbaum. I do like Zion Johnson. I like Kenyon Green, so I don't want to say it's also Rams. But, dude, there is such a gap between what I think Tyler Linderbaum can do versus everybody else. I have a top 10 grade on Tyler Linderbaum. And everyone's saying, oh, he's a center, positional value, all this other. Shut up. Listen, if he's that good, you just shut up and take him. You don't even think about it.
Yep.
I think you're getting a guy that maybe isn't quite physically as dominant as someone like Quentin Nelson was for the Colts, but you're getting a guy that has better movement skills, is just as good with his hands, and is just as nasty as a guy like that. I don't care if he plays center. I don't care if he plays punter. If you get a guy that is that special, maybe not with your first round pick, but just take him. Just take him.
I mean, if that's the need you have.
You can punt the ball like 96 yards and like drop it on the one every time. Yeah, maybe, but still. Tyler Linderbaum's a special talent. You're going to see him fall in this draft because people are going to get scared of drafting a center this high, whatever team winds up with him. I hope the Titans get him at 26 because if that happens and he falls that far, it's party time for me in Nashville.
God, I hope not.
Because I won't shut up about it.
Probably not.
He's a center, dude. Relax.
Have you seen Linderbaum, man? Did you see it? I was at the practice, man. That guy just ripped up the cones.
Let me say this. Do you like Tristan Wirfs?
Yes.
Everyone likes Tristan Wirfs.
I liked him out of the draft, too.
This is one of the few guys, there was only 2 guys in college that beat him in wrestling because they were both college wrestlers. And he beat Tristan Wirfs in wrestling. He's good with his hands. He's good at using force and manipulating guys, using good leverage and everything. That's what you're getting when you get a guy with Linderbaum. This is a special talent, and he might fall because teams get scared of drafting a center and having to justify it to the fan base. Don't buy into all that garbage. Draft a good offensive line when you see him. And don't look back because Tyler Linderbaum, special talent. Trevor Lawrence, maybe too, but definitely Linderbaum.
Richard said the Steelers showed last year how important a no line is between a good and great year. Absolutely.
Amen to that.
But of course, also what a mobile quarterback or just a quarterback that can move, what difference that changes.
It'll help, but offensive line is huge, and I definitely agree with that. As far as the rest of these guys go, I actually see this as like a decent draft for like getting guys in the mid rounds. But I don't see this as a spot where you're going to see a lot of guys go early. I think you might see Zion Johnson and Kenyon Green sniff the first round. Like maybe they're early day 2, maybe they're late day 1. Tampa's if anyone's locked in on a position, Tampa taking a guard to replace Ali Marpet, who retired, it seems like it's just already done and like that's already been drafted.
Yeah.
So I think both those guys creep in the first round. That's about it, though. Everybody else is going to be a mid-round pick, but there's some good mid-round picks to have.
Absolutely. Mitchell, good to see you. He says, is Vanderbilt ever going to produce a draft-worthy player?
The Titans have one in Zach Cunningham.
Is that the linebacker?
Yeah, linebacker.
Yeah.
He's had a pretty solid career. Their defensive picks haven't been terrible.
They actually have another linebacker that's
Jay Cutler was Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Jay Cutler was Vanderbilt.
So,
I mean, some people say that was terrible.
Depends who you ask, definitely. But he survived.
They had another linebacker that came out a couple years ago, too, that ended up being decent.
You're stumping me off the top of my head. This is like trivia. Who's good? They had the corner that went to the Patriots, whose name I can't think of right now.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, famous Vanderbilt guy. Anyway.
Vanderbilt's a baseball team.
For the most part. Well, now that James Franklin's gone, yes. I don't think I've ever seen a better coaching job than when James Franklin got Vanderbilt to 9 wins in the SEC. I don't think I've seen a better job.
I like Derek Mason. I think
he's a better coordinator than a head coach.
Well, I actually think he's a better coach than he is a recruiter.
And I'll drink to that. And their defense was always good under him.
Great guy, by the way. Great guy.
Absolutely. Anyway, this year, though, if they have a guy that's going to get drafted, I don't know him. So take that as it is. I haven't watched as much film as I usually do. I'll give you so just full disclosure. I have 120 guys on my big board. I watched about 160 guys worth of tape. So I didn't get to do like the full like 200, 250 that I usually do. But at the very least, there's not really a prospect out of Vanderbilt that I think you're going to see before day 3.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If that.
If there is, I'm forgetting him. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Defensive interior. I want to just grind over this because I have to talk about Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis. And I know, Drew, we're kind of running up on it in time, so we'll hustle through a little bit of this. But Devontae Wyatt, to me, is the better of the two. And everyone has fallen in love with Jordan Davis because of the side, because of everything else. But let me tell you this. Why was he not on the field for more than like 40% of the snaps at Georgia? I think there's some serious stamina concerns.
It is an issue. But again, and we bring it up. I brought it up. People fall in love with the physicality of a man, even though his film isn't that great or whatever it is. It seems to push people up. I see you have him as a second.
The film is awesome.
No.
In super short bursts.
What I'm saying is, it doesn't matter what the film is in the sense of, is he out there for every play? Is he giving effort 100% of the time? Is he only playing when the play matters or the down matters? That seems to go out the door when people go, look at this guy. He's huge.
You remember Mount Cody?
Yeah.
Jordan Davis is better than Mount Cody. But
I see you have him as a second-round grade. He's falling in the first round. He is going in the first round.
Talks to Chargers might take him at 17.
And I'll just say, he might fall before Wyatt.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. It's a mistake, in my opinion, at least, because at least when I see Devontae Wyatt, I mean, you're getting a 304-pound defensive tackle. He's not small. He can play the nose if you ask him to. But when you plug him in with a guy like Wyatt, when you plug him in at 3 technique in a 4-3, and he's able to play off the center, and he's able to rush the passer a little bit more, you're going to get a guy that – I don't love throwing out those lofty expectations because it's not fair to the prospect, but I see a guy kind of like Chris Jones, except a better run defender than that. I like Chris. He's not going to be the pass rusher Chris Jones is, because it wouldn't be fair for me to say anyone in college is going to be the pass rusher Chris Jones is. But he has some of that talent.
Even coming out of college, I didn't know Chris Jones was going to be the pass rusher.
I don't think anyone did, or he probably wouldn't go in the second round. But when you look at a guy like Devontae Wyatt, he has everything. He has elite burst. He's a big-bodied guy. He has a great first step, which a D tackle is like massive. He's going to be the guy that is always pushing the pocket in, and that's exactly what you need. He has strength, he has size, he has speed. Give me the guy who's good at everything versus the guy who's special as a run defender, but also gets gassed, can't play more than 40% of the snaps at Georgia. And then if you look at when they played Alabama in the national championship, Alabama was running a lot of hurry-up when they wanted to throw the ball when he was on the field, so that they forced him to get into pass-rushing situations. I'm not spending a first-round pick on a D tackle if he can't rush the passer.
So when you look
Somebody will, but I'm not going to.
I definitely want to get you guys' comments. When I talk about Jordan Davis, just because he's kind of been like the highlight of like off-season defensive linemen, I think what everyone's trying to hype him up to be is like an Albert Haynesworth or maybe even a Vince Wilfork. But I don't think he has, like you said, I don't think he has that motor to stay on the field that long. I think it is going to be a flop, but
he's going to be the Washington Albert Haynesworth.
But
I'm not calling him a bust.
If you have to throw him out there, if you got him, if it felt and he was on the top of your board and you got him at like pick 30, okay, and all he has to do is go out there during running downs and even if, okay, put him in, make the team have to go, okay, we can't run the ball up the middle, so we're going to change up our scheme and throw the ball. You know how crazy it is in the NFL when you change an offensive scheme? It changes so much. So college doesn't really matter. Yes, there's schemes in college offense, but NFL schemes are the most important. If you can mix it up, they practice all week about how we're going to throw the ball to this side of the field or throw the ball or run to this side, and you make them change, you watch that offense, and majority, not your elite quarterbacks, but the majority of your offense in the NFL will struggle.
Absolutely. I do buy into that. So I will agree with you in that. The only scary thing is, yes, you might change them away from running, but if they say, let's throw on every down he's out here because we want to wear him out and we don't think he's going to rush the passer well enough, that scares me a little bit.
It is.
The reverse of that is kind of like Yannick Ngakoue. Do you like Yannick Ngakoue? Because he's going to get a lot of sacks. You can put him in there on like 3rd and 8, but the problem is if it's 2nd and 2, he can't be on the field because teams are going to see him come out there and be like, we're running at that guy. So, again, interesting to see. There's a couple other D tackles I like in this draft class. We won't necessarily go into them. There's like 3 or 4 guys that I think actually have a pretty decent chance of getting drafted highly. After that, it gets kind of skinny as well. So if you want your guy, you might see a first-round pick at a D tackle just because it gets kind of skinny after that.
Let's hit some of these comments. Richard says, what university do you see the most draft picks this year? He says he sees Alabama, unfortunately. Before you answer, yeah, I think it's going to be your kind of...
I think this might be Georgia. All those defenders coming out. I mean, there's like 3 linebackers. I think there is.
I think it's going to be
Channing Tindall, Quay Walker,
the same 3 you see every year: Alabama, Georgia, Iowa State, Ohio State.
Ohio State. Yeah.
Ohio State.
But yeah, I'm gonna bet Georgia. If I had to pick one, I'll say Alabama's probably gonna be a close second. But you're getting all those defensive guys coming off of that. You got 3 linebackers that are coming out for there. You have I think 3 defensive linemen. It might be 4 even. I'm not 100%. Do you count Jermaine Johnson, who transferred to Florida State, but he was a Georgia player? No, you don't. But you might as well, because he was on Georgia for years and had to leave so that he could get some play time. I think you also have George Pickens in there. I think when you bet on it, Lewis Seen, we'll talk about him at safety. It'll probably be Georgia that's probably stealing the show, at least on early draft picks. Maybe Ohio State overtakes them because they always seem like they have a ton of draft picks. Alabama, too. Maybe they overtake them with some late round picks. But if you're talking about who's getting the most highly drafted guys, just watch. It's going to be you're going to get tired of hearing them talk about Georgia players coming out by the time this draft is over, and for good reason.
Mitchell says that in Vanderbilt news, Franklin did magic. Derek Mason needs to go on because a coach sees that as I can coach him, but can he teach him and show him to be better? I maybe you're a little bit more into Vanderbilt football than I am, but
the worst thing they ever did was let James Franklin walk out the door, and that has nothing to do with Derek Mason, only for the fact that they hit so well on him. I would have paid him whatever it took.
I can't sit here and say that Derek Mason didn't try to teach and make those players be better.
Sure.
So that's the reason why, you might know more than I do, but
defensively, he had him rolling on defense. It was ugly games when you watched Vanderbilt.
It was a game against Alabama in Vanderbilt a couple years back with Derek Mason coaching, and in the first half, it was like 13-10 Alabama, and we're all like, "What?"
Yeah.
And now the game ended 53-10, but still, it was like he had a scheme and he was coaching these players. But sooner or later, when you can't bring enough players in, you're not doing that whole part of the other side of college football. You're gonna lose. You can't beat Alabama when you're bringing that many players in. Frank says, in talking about going back to NFL, they have so many defensive linemen rotating in and out so much. I'm assuming he's talking about NFL. Yes, they absolutely do.
Might be Georgia, too. I mean, yeah, it was...
Well, we were talking about Davis staying out there and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
And the talent, yeah. I mean, the talent level's there. But, again, 40% of snaps, and you're not playing 40% of the snaps when you're this talented of a guy?
Could you imagine?
And he is talented.
Could you imagine if he goes into the the AFC North against the Packers, and he's not a Packer, and how many times Aaron Rodgers is going to snap the ball before he gets off the field?
Exactly. It's going to be. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is going to get like 12 man penalties against whoever takes it. I know. But that's the thing. He's not slow for that size. He's not slow. I mean, he ran a great for like an all-time 40 for his weight. But let me just say this. It's not like what can you do one time? What are you going to look like in the third quarter where it's just been you in the center and the guard battling for play and play and play and play after over 3 quarters worth of play? I worry about that one.
Oh, Frank was talking about Georgia.
Yeah, they had a lot of guys, but he's supposed to be a special talent. You didn't see him saying, hey, Trayvon Walker, come on off the field, man. I mean, it happened some. They rotated, but it wasn't like they were pulling him. He wasn't playing 40% of the snaps. I think there's some stamina concerns with it. Let's crush some linebacker unless we have some comments that you want to hit.
No, let's go.
All right, linebacker, really quick. Devin Lloyd's the best in this because he is like everything you like. He's good at it. Like if you want a guy who covers the pass, he's good at it. If you want a guy who can blitz, he's good at it. If you want a guy who's going to stop running backs and everything else, he's good at it. But he's 24. And teams don't seem to love linebacker anymore since offensive coordinators figured out that nobody's allowed touching by wide receivers over the middle anymore. So might drop to like 20s.
This is actually kind of like my surprise Kansas City pick because every time I think Kansas City's not going to take or is going to take something that they need, like they need a wide receiver. Oh, they need a corner. And then they'll go out and they'll draft a linebacker. Mm-hmm. This is kind of where I think they might fall.
If he does fall to 29, take him.
We have 2 great young running backs, but they're not middle linebackers. So with Gay and Bolton sitting on the outside, we need a middle linebacker. Hitchens is gone. This wouldn't surprise me. That being said, that's not what we're talking about because I get always stuck up in Kansas City. Be
more professional like me. I don't talk about my team all the time.
No, not at all. This is such a underrated position in today's NFL because your great middle linebackers, I mean, you might say, Bobby Wagner was probably one of the last ones. I know there's some great ones out there. I'm not trying to diminish anybody.
And you thought Colts fans hated me right now.
Right. But that Brian Urlacher, Ray Lewis, those years of greatness seem to be gone in the limelight. But this position is so important that this is like your guy that rotates your whole entire defense. And I look at the board, and you're probably right. You're probably right. 2 linebackers in the first round when there might need to be 3 or 4.
I think there could be. When you look at guys like Leo Chenal, Chad Muma, Brian Asamoah, for me, there are guys that they're like on the fringe of that first round. That if you took them at like 31, I wouldn't be like, oh, what are they doing?
Yeah.
But I think there's so much talent here at linebacker, and it's become a position that people don't love so much that you can wait. And I think that might be what pushes guys down, because they're going to say, everyone's going to want a wide receiver. Everyone's going to want one of these corners.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to want one of these other positions. I can wait on linebacker because I know I'm going to get a good one.
Do you remember when the middle linebacker was the highest paid position on defense?
I do. Do you remember what Brian Urlacher used to do to offenses? Gone are the days, my friend. Gone are the days for sure. But let me tell you this. I said it about Linderbaum, and I want to say it about Devin Lloyd too. When you have a special player, you just take him. And that's the thing. I think you're getting a special linebacker here. Is he going to be Darius Leonard? I don't know. Is it going to be Fred Warner? I've seen a lot of Fred Warner comps, but I don't know that it's fair to me to say, like, this is who he's going to be, and if it's anything short of that, like, he's disappointing. That's not fair to him, but I know for sure the floor is high. You're going to get a good linebacker with him, and he has that elite potential that he might be one of the guys that we're like, there's no good linebackers in the NFL except Devin Lloyd. So he might be that guy that you're saying, not a ton of great linebackers. This guy's one of them. As far as everyone else, Nakobe Dean, if he wasn't 5'11", would probably be up there with his range. I mean, I talked about Urlacher. You talk about sideline to sideline. That is what you're getting with Nakobe Dean.
God, I don't know why when you told me 5'11" at middle linebacker, what was Jonathan Vilma? I think
he was like 6'1" or 6'2".
Was he that tall? I felt like
so.
He was undersized.
I think they listed him at it. I mean, I don't know. What is he actually? I don't know. I'm not his doctor.
Maybe they probably listed him at 6 foot. That's when you said that. That was for some reason. That's the first guy that popped into my head about a middle linebacker who doesn't have the height but can play well. Dean might be able to do that. Dean might be able to fill that position. And as Frank says, he said quarterbacks of the defense. Yes, they need to be there.
That's what you're getting with these top 2 guys.
Yeah. Yes, he needs to be there. Yes, he needs to be able to make plays. But sometimes just putting your guys in the right position is the most important thing that they can do. I know you want really smart safeties in the backfield. You look at like Tyrone Matthew. He can't.
You're forgetting someone who's better than Tyrone Matthew.
Nobody
at safety.
Nobody on the Titans.
Kevin Byard.
So
Middle Tennessee, great. I mean,
my point is,
you live in Middle Tennessee. You gotta give me some respect.
My point is though, even though how great they are and can sit there and try to move your defense around, they don't have the position the middle linebacker does.
Sure.
He's literally in the middle of the field. He should be able to direct everyone. You tell me, man, what is the knowledge that these guys have in Lloyd and Dean? I mean, I know you got Lloyd at number 1, Dean number 2. Do you feel like maybe there's someone on the bottom half of your list that might have the knowledge, but maybe not the physicality?
From an actual knowledge perspective, no, and that's the thing.
I love putting you on the spot.
I don't hate it either. I like being tested. But let me say this. There's not a guy that I say is the quarterback of a defense that doesn't stack up physically. The reverse is actually true, where maybe he's missing some mental parts to his game, but he has the physical traits that you're like, let's gamble on the late second, early third round on some of these guys. But there's not a guy that I'm going to look at and I'm going to say, well, he's very good at directing the defense, but he doesn't physically have it. At the very least, from the guys that I watched this time, there's a lot of projects. There's guys that you're like, a good example of that would be like Quay Walker out of Georgia. He's 240 at 6'4", and he closes on the ball like a safety. I mean, the guy can absolutely close guys down, has all the physical traits, but you wonder, does he have the mental part of the game that some guys like Nakobe Dean or Devin Lloyd have? That's the reason I see him dropping and those other guys sticking up towards the top.
Jonathan Vilma was listed at 6'1".
What did I say? 6'1" or 6'2"?
Yeah, you did.
I mean, we kind of split it. You said 6 foot. It wasn't like I was.
I just, for some reason, he popped in my head first.
Yeah.
Talk about a guy that has a ton of football knowledge. Vilma was a stud.
Nakobe Dean, again, if he was 6'1", 229 pounds, we'd take him first. Like, there's in my mind, everyone would be like, okay, but 5'11", you see that 5 is the first digit, it's going to scare teams. And that's just where it's at. A couple other guys, Chad Muma, Leo Chenal, Brian Asamoah, I talked about them. They're just physical freaks. Especially Leo Chenal and Chad Muma. You're talking about like crazy strength for these guys that are going to be awesome in the run game. Maybe they help out a little bit in pass defense as well. There's linebackers to be had later in the draft if you want to wait. But if one of these guys goes in late first round, I'm not going to say, oh, man, what were you thinking? Because I think they're that talented this year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Any comments, or do you want to just crush some cornerback?
Let's crush the cornerbacks.
Trying to go to a Preds game tonight?
No, I got to pee really bad.
All right, really quick. Cornerback, it's either first round or give up on it. Because I could really see a couple of these guys. I see 5 guys, starting with Sauce Gardner. You have Derek Stingley up there as well. And everyone's there now. Almost, I saw a lot of Derek Stingley love, and everyone kind of got to know him. They're like, what do you mean he was quitting on plays? What do you mean there's like character concerns? Let me just say, your boy has been on the Sauce Gardner train from day one.
I'm just saying, if I played on LSU, I'd probably give up a couple of my games too.
And he's not the only guy who did.
Yeah.
But
it was a rough year.
When you're talking about taking a guy in the top 10, do you want the guy who's like, things aren't going well, so I'm going to take it easy?
No, I don't want that either. But
I want Sauce Gardner who's like, I'm a dog.
But we talk about how people have grown up. We're talking about like Josh Rosen, how he was rich before he got in the NFL. You're talking about these players that realize that their window to go in the NFL is only so much. And you're talking about a team in LSU that should have been better than what they were, but they were not. That you're like, I'm not going to give my all and get hurt, and then I can't go in the NFL and make money.
And you know what I'm saying? Whew, miss me with that guy. Nobody wants the Kyler Murray saying, it's year 3. It's time for me to be paid. If you want, you can take a break here, Drew. I can carry. I got you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go pee because I am like
your eyeballs are floating. I can tell.
I'm crossing my legs.
But let me say this about the cornerback position, because when I look at these guys, I want to start with Sauce Gardner. Again, this has been my number 1 corner pretty much since the season ended, and the reason is, if you look back at the national championship and you look at what he was able to do against even teams like Alabama. I know Cincinnati, they're not in the Power 5. Everybody says that they're not that good of a program, and I kind of agree in the sense of they didn't really play that tough of a schedule. But when you look at Sauce Gardner, Alabama did not target him like at all. I think he had like 4 targets in their game in the college football playoff, because they respect his game so much and because he is just such a dominant man, press man corner. Like, this is the guy that when you need somebody to get in a receiver's face, he's just going to win. And that's exactly what he's good at. Now, I've seen some concerns. People say Sauce isn't good enough at zone coverage. Sauce isn't good enough at this, at that, but he's more of a man coverage specialist. I don't believe any of that. I think he has the size, he has the length, he has really long arms for a corner, which means he's going to be going up there swatting the ball away from guys like Jamar Chase. This is everything you want in a cornerback, and I think he's good enough at zone coverage that it does not matter. You just take him as the number 1 guy. Now, Derek Stingley, number 2 on this board. He's a guy that when you look at Stingley has all the physical traits that you want to see, but you wonder about some of the mental stuff. You wonder if he's a bit of a quitter when things aren't going well. Because in the NFL, the difference between losing by 10 points and 20 points makes a pretty big difference in the eyes of your owner. So you can't have guys that give up on plays. You can't have guys that give up on games because things aren't going the right way, especially drafted high at the draft where the bad teams are picking. I see Derek Stingley dropping a little bit. He's still a top 10 pick for me. But at the very least, Derek Stingley is one of those guys that all the physical traits are there. And if he had the kind of career all the way across the board that he had as a freshman, he would be probably the number 1 pick in this draft. So the high end is there with him as well. But he has some negatives, I think, that are going to scare a lot of teams off in this draft that sees him drop. Now, finally, when you're talking about guys that are in the elite mix, guys that should be top 10, top 12, top 15, I'm working on it. I'm talking too much, man. I'm not having time to drink. But Trent McDuffie.
What? You're not drinking? Here, put that over there.
Okay. When you need another guy that can come in and play some zone coverage, Trent McDuffie is the man in that. He's probably not big enough to go up and square up on the line of scrimmage, but what you want to do is you want to run him like a Darius Slay type, where you're going to drop into coverage. Slay's better at that, but at man coverage. But you want to drop him in zone with Trent McDuffie and use him in one of those roles where he's going to creep on receivers and break on the ball after it's thrown.
Catch me up on everything you said while I went to the bathroom.
Okay, one more time. Sauce is the best. Derek Stingley, all the physical tools, but the mental stuff is kind of a worrying thing. Trent McDuffie, the reverse. The mental is there. The zone coverage is there. The instinct is there. But he's 5'11", perhaps. They list him as 5'11". He might be 5'9". Yeah. Might be shorter than us, Drew.
I always think that's so funny how they list people like that.
Always.
Just accept it.
6'3", everyone on my roster.
100%. 5'10" right here.
Yeah.
Just don't grab the measuring tape because it will tell you 5'8" and it's lying.
Trent might be saying the same thing. But, he's not a big guy. But when it comes to instincts, that's what you're getting with him. There's no way he goes before these other two. But let me say this. If he goes in the top 11, 12, 13, and you're like, why did this small of a corner go? He is going to be a beast in zone coverage. He's going to be the guy that he's going to duck down low. The quarterback's not going to see him. He's going to throw that out route, and then he's going to jump it and go take it for 6.
You can only hope.
Love Trent McDuffie. Love him. I'm going to marry him, Drew. I'm not. But what I am going to say is at the very least, that much respect for the guy, okay?
Yeah. Man, I get it.
Trent McDuffie.
I don't get it.
Trent McDuffie is the guy that you can look at and say the physical tools might not be the best, but the instinct is. And that's exactly what you're getting with a guy like him.
What I love when you do about things like this is you sit there and you choose somebody that you really like, and then no matter what happens, I get to tell them that that's your guy.
That's my guy. Trent McDuffie, as far as it goes, Arcega-Whiteside didn't work out, but Trent McDuffie, I'm proud to say that he is one of my guys.
All right.
For sure.
I'm excited to hear it.
As far as everybody else in the first round, Kyer Elam and Andrew Booth, I think, are first-round cornerbacks for different reasons. Andrew Booth is that all-around corner. If you want a guy who's good at everything but not great at anything, Andrew Booth is your man. Kyer Elam is the man corner that you just literally lets him go toe-to-toe and just beat somebody up. Popular every day, man.
I'm listening.
After that, things start to sour.
I'm distracting you.
Yeah. For good reason.
Richard says he's 5'8", but in football, he's 6'2".
Exactly. See, he gets it. Good call, Coach. Absolutely. That's what we're listing him as. You go out there and you're like, where is Trent McDuffie? I don't know.
I don't know.
No, his teammate, Kyler Gordon's the same way. He's
Just
5. They list him as 6 foot, but, dude, he's 5'9", okay? But they say he's 6 foot. Same thing.
Is he really 5'9"?
I don't know. I probably go look at him and be like, hello, sir. But, I don't know. He's not a big man. Anyway, after the top couple guys at cornerback, things start to get skinny. And I think you're going to see teams jump on those corners in this draft because it's so thin after the first 4, 5, 6 guys.
So which one of these corners is your team taking and my team taking? Because we both need corners.
We definitely do. Let me say this about the Titans. Because they don't have a second-round pick, they might not take one. So the Chiefs might benefit from that, where another team that needs one probably isn't going to grab one ahead of time.
You guys need one.
As far as the Chiefs go, with the way they play press man, Kyer Elam would fit in perfectly. Because Spagnuolo loves blitzing, and when you love blitzing, you can't sit back deep in a zone. Because bad things tend to happen. Usually you got to get up in the receiver's face, try to create time for your edge rushers by putting your hands on them. That's Kyer Elam.
Well, you just made my wife happy because she's a Florida fan. So
yeah, absolutely. And he's a guy that I thought was actually going to finish higher than this. I thought going into this year he was going to be a much more lauded candidate. He had a bit of a drop-off, not quite as good of a year as we wanted to see. But as far as it goes, when you need those press man coverage guys, except for maybe Sauce and Stingley, he's third on that list.
I like the size of him at 6'2". It would make sense. We have such a terrible habit of drafting undersized corners. It drives me nuts.
And Spagnuolo's defense is one where you just have to stop the play before it gets too long. You can't have a 4.5 second pass.
Correct.
It's got to be 2.5 where you're getting to the quarterback and then he's making the mistake because you're sending the house. So
right.
At the very least, I like him for the Chiefs. I like him for teams like the Patriots and other teams that really want to get in the other team's face. The Ravens, another team that does. They do some zone, but they also like press man as well. I think the Ravens could be another team that would be
also in need of a corner.
But again, once you start to strike out, Kyler Gordon, I like because of his athleticism. Has some questions with his technique. Roger McCreary, I don't know what to think about Roger McCreary. To tell you the truth, this dude locked up Jamar Chase, but his arms are so short. You're like, is that going to happen in the NFL? I don't know.
Outside of defensive end and wide receiver, is this the second, third deepest talent?
I'd say linebacker. Linebacker is better.
And then
there's a little bit of talent here. But
this is definitely a defensive draft.
Yes. Yeah,
For
100%.
sure.
Except for wide receiver. I mean, quarterbacks kind of stink. Running back is top heavy, and the rest of the guys are kind of also rans. Tight end isn't really deep. There's not a Kyle Pitts this time. Offensive line is good at the top, but not like, especially tackled, not as deep as we'd like to see. Yeah, it's a defensive draft.
Richard says, are you guys going to do any USFL shows this year?
Should we? Did anyone show up to the USFL? Because I watched the first day they did, and I watched them this weekend. I was like, there's nobody there. I'd like to, but man. Drew,
Richard, feel free to ask any question. I guarantee you, my friend here.
And I was going to say,
we'll probably have an idea. I watched also the first week. I don't even know. It was kind of depressing.
I thought. See, I was the opposite. I thought it was going to be worse, and I was pleasantly surprised by the gameplay. But then, like, Easter Sunday rolled around, and like it was raining. It was Easter.
Is it bad though that like
Nobody was there?
I want to see some names that I recognize? I saw a couple, but not enough. Where I'm like, hey, that guy could play in the NFL.
Yeah. But we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic as I am because I think there's a market for spring football. We just have to hit on that league. Maybe it's the XFL next year. We'll see. You have a comment. I saw you write the name.
Yeah, Perry. Good to see you, man. It's been a while. He says, he says he does not pay attention to the draft until draft day.
Well, we're here, buddy, because 2 days from now, I mean, we're about on that doorstep right now.
Perry, I'm going to be real with you, man. It is so hard to deep dive into the draft year in and year out. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. For the last 3 years, I would deep dive in the draft. This year, I did not because I didn't know what Sports Around the Bar was going to be this year. So I have taken a seat back to it. Jake has literally done the complete opposite and just went head nose into it. And
if I could just point something out really quick, and it's a good point, let me just say this is like one of my favorite parts of the year, and I'm going to get a little sentimental here. The reason I like it, Drew, is because this is really what is going to set your team forward in the years to come. And it's underrated. But when you have good drafts, it sets you up 3, 4, 5 years from now for when your team is actually good. So I love this time of year. And I really enjoy the whole process and almost the lottery system where it's like you don't know who's going to be good. I loved Arcega-Whiteside, and he stinks.
Yeah, I fell in love with a lot of players.
I love Jamar Chase, and he's great. So it's like the surprise of it all is always awesome. I love this time of year, and I think it is, again, one of the as much as hype is around the NFL draft, I still think it's underrated for how important it is for teams.
You know, it's funny for me is I loved the combine. Mm-hmm. I used to take the combine off from work so I could watch the combine. But the problem was there's so many darn names. But the fourth day after the combine's pretty much done, I'm like, who?
It all becomes a blur. You've watched so many 40s.
It doesn't matter anymore.
It's all one big 40 at the end of the day.
Richard says, how do you see the USFL affecting the draft? It's going to. It's absolutely going to. What was the league that was 2 years ago that started?
AAF.
The AAF.
American
it
AF.
affected the draft because there were some positions that teams didn't take because they were going to pull from there. So, yes, it will affect it. I don't know how much.
One of the downsides, they're starting later, which means by the time they finish this season up, if a guy hasn't already been poached, he's going to be gassed by the time the NFL season rolls around. So I think you're going to see a little bit less translation than we saw with the AAF. That, again, folded halfway through as well. So you got guys like noted Titans legend Logan Woodside, backup quarterback, that is still hanging around from the AAF. There's still a few guys that are hanging around from that league. Does this league have that same impact when you get to the end of the first season, if they make it all the way, and then guys have to immediately turn around and start another season? I'm a little less optimistic because they've started so late. I think it's a perfect time to start if I want to set up my own league. But as far as translating to the NFL, I think it's going to matter less than it has in years before.
Frank says pro days are taking over the combine. Uh-oh.
Only because guys want to control what did we lose something? Are we still good? Are we still live? Yes? All right. Only because guys...
There it goes. That was weird. Pro days are taking over the combine. Yeah, but not in the right reasons, though. Not in the right reasons. I don't know what you're about to say, but players, they want to be comfortable. And they want to show their best skill that they have around people they're used to, the field they're used to, the balls they're used to, whatever it is, they want to have that. But true NFL player or scouts and teams are going to look at the combine a lot harder. Teams or players that go out there and perform under the pressure and do well, or even not do as great as they should, are going to benefit from being at the combine. I think the reason why pro days are a little bit better is because you see some of the college fans go, ooh, that's going to be a lot of fun watching them again.
And if you're a quarterback, you're throwing to receivers, And
right.
If you're an offensive lineman, you're working with your coaches and everything else. That's why players like it. But I want to see you perform under adverse situations.
Right. That's why I think the fans make a difference of that too. But if you're talking about a true NFL fan, you want to see the combine because, like you said, they're under pressure.
Let me see you out of your element. And that's exactly why the combine is more important, in my opinion. Number one, yes, guys are leaning into, hey, I just won't work out at the combine. I'll work out on my pro day, and they'll just have to accept it. But I think NFL teams go and look at the guys who do work out at the combine and are like, the balls on this guy make it worth it. Maybe pushing him up my board a couple spots. Maybe he was 36, but now he's 33rd.
I'm trying to think outside of quarterbacks who were some players that didn't do the combine because they want to do pro days. I can't really think of anything.
Guys wouldn't skip the entire combine, but they would skip a lot of drills. Especially this year, we've seen more drills skipped at the combine than ever before.
Right.
And a lot of it's like bench press. A lot of guys won't bench till they go to their pro day.
Frank says he agrees, just the big names on pro day.
It's important, but here's the thing. I mean, you have a guy like Kyle Hamilton that, again, ran a really, really bad 40 time. But a lot of it was like, if you look at his 10 split, which for all the uninitiated, the 10 split is the first 10 seconds, or the first 10 yards, of a 40-yard dash, which, again, when you're not used to being in the 3 technique, you're not used to lining up like a sprinter, you got your hand in the dirt and everything else like a safety is, you're never going to do that. I think when you talk about, like, what matters with the team and these drills and everything, you have a little bit more control over everything, but you still have to look at the overall arching, like, how much does this compare to what my guy is actually going to be doing in the NFL? And a lot of times, even things like the 40-yard dash, I don't care how fast a defensive tackle runs 40 yards, because he's going to run 15 at most, and then he's going to be out of breath and the play is over.
Now, I do like that first, 10 yards on the 40-yard dash.
Yeah, the 10-yard split.
Yeah.
The 10 split.
Right.
It's huge, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
I like that
underrated stat.
I like the 3-cone drill. I like to know what that is.
Agility.
Because you're turning at...
And you know what guys said at the combine this year? I'm not doing it. I'm going to run it at my pro day. And part of it is because the combine, I know I'm getting a little deep in the weeds here, and I promise we'll get back to it, but this year at the combine, they really messed up the schedule where, they were keeping guys on their feet till 11 o'clock at night. Your day was starting at 6 in the morning and it was ending at 11 o'clock at night. Are you putting up the best numbers then? No. So I don't blame them for saying I'm not going to do this.
Can we kind of admit that maybe we need to change where it's the locations at? I know.
Tired of Indy?
Well,
me too. Get the Colts out of the AFC South.
Have you watched
Give me some of
those players have to run at their hotels?
Yeah.
You're
warming up in the hotel hallway and stuff.
Yeah, come on. Yeah. How do you not? You've literally had the combine there for years. How do you not have a facility for these players to be at?
And my thing is they botched it. They need to set up a better schedule that makes it easier on these guys. Period.
Perry says, "Do you think Rocky Lombardi gets drafted next year?"
No. No offense. I think I just see him as a fringe, maybe 6th, 7th round pick, but I don't think there is a little bit of something that goes toward hey, do you have the pedigree and the name for it? But let's remember, Lombardi is famous for being a coach. And I really think when you're talking about that, I don't think anyone's going to lean into the player and say,
what position did he even play?
He was. I don't know. I don't know that he played an actual position. I know he was one of the coaches for the first couple Super Bowls. That's the thing.
It's Lombardi.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But I don't know.
I'm going to say he played.
I'm going to say that's lost to the fog of time.
I'm going to say he played, but I don't remember what he played because he was a very short guy. He was not a tall man.
As far as it goes, listen, I'll say this. I don't really see him as a high draft pick at this point, but college is a weird sport in the fact that guys can be relative nobodies or high-end level guys, and the last year is so much more important than everything else that you've seen that it can radically change draft stock. And Spencer Rattler went to the point where, he might not have been drafted in this draft because it was that bad, because he was benched at Oklahoma. So things can radically change. It's not fair to a guy to say, oh, yeah, there's no way he gets drafted a year out, but we'll see.
Richard says the Browns will draft him for sure. That's the closest they will get to
First
come
rounder?
to a Lombardi.
Okay, brutal.
All right, let's get to the safeties, man.
Safeties, really quick, and I'm going to wrap it up here. Everyone's down on Kyle Hamilton because he ran like a really, really bad 40 time. I don't care. I watch him on tape. Dude's fast, really rangy safety, sideline to sideline. I don't care what you run in a test in your underwear.
Well, safeties don't have to be fast.
But he is, and it's just like he's not conventionally fast in a drill.
I say that in the sense of they're way faster than I am, all of them. But
Me too.
You don't have to be top end speed to be a safety. You already have angle of pursuit in your favor. It's your hands, it's your intelligence that matter the most at safety. Ed Reed, not the fastest man in the world, one of the best safeties I've ever seen play.
But he was always there when the ball got there.
Sean Taylor, one of the probably my favorite safety to ever play. Not the fastest man.
Another guy like Polamalu. Again, instinct.
Yes.
More than physical ability. Instinct is huge. But let me ask you this. Do you like Derwin James? You want a Derwin James on your team? Then go get you Kyle Hamilton, because I haven't seen a safety this kind of talented all
Derwin
across
James
the board.
Healthy.
Okay. Well, Kyle Hamilton's been healthy. My point here being, I haven't seen this all around of a safety since Derwin James. And Derwin James fell to 18, 15, something like that in the draft when he went. Kyle Hamilton might be the same way because he ran a really bad 40 time from the three-point stance, and his 10 split was awful. But when you watch him on tape, you don't see any of that, and that's all I care about. So at the very least, if your team lucks into this guy at 12, 13, 14, 15, you got the steal of the draft, because this is a top 5 player in my opinion, and I don't say that about safety very much because, again, positional value, safety's not really high on the list. But this guy is such a difference maker. He's going to be on the field all the time. He can square up with the tight end at 6'4", 220. He can stuff the running back, no problem. He can match up with receivers with the ability in his range. It's Kyle Hamilton and everybody else, even though there's other good safeties in this draft, he is just on a pedestal above everybody else, in my opinion. If the Giants took him at 5, I would say I get it. If the Jets took him at 4, I'd say I get it. If the Texans took him at 3, just because they need anyone anywhere, I'd say I get it. I probably wouldn't take him number 1.
They're in need. Texans are in need.
Yeah, everybody's in need on Houston, but I'm just saying. If the Texans took him at 3, if you're talking about best available, he's your guy. And it just falls that simple. It's just that simple. There's a couple more guys I like in the first round, maybe like back end, guys like Lewis Seen, guys like Daxton Hill. Those two guys, I think, have the all-around capabilities to be good safeties. I see them more as free safeties, both of them. But I think they can play strong if they need to, in the sense of a too-high strong safety, where we're mostly going to drop these guys back and let them play coverage, but when I need somebody to come up and make a play, those are the guys who can do it. After that, Jalen Petrie, he's like a corner. He's almost a cornerback. I didn't know if I'd put him at safety or slot corner, but that's the kind of the role he's going to play. Very physical guy. Jaquan Brisker is your pure strong safety. I need a smasher kind of guy, but also is not totally helpless in pass coverage. After that,
a dying breed in the NFL.
Very, very much so. These days, I hate to pick on the Chiefs again. Everybody saw, how do we battle Mahomes? We just drop our safeties back deep and say there's no way anyone's getting behind us. Everybody seems like that's the way they're going. So guys like Daxton Hill, guys like Lewis Seen, those are the guys you want for that.
Yeah.
On top of that, Jaquan Brisker doesn't really necessarily fit that mold, but still can be that nickel/dime guy that comes on the field. These days, you're not seeing as many linebackers doing it. So he might be that safety that comes on when you pull the linebacker instead. Nick Cross, I like him too. We won't really go too far into the weeds here, but there's some depth at safety. Safety and what was the other position you were asking me about? Whether this is the
corner.
Safety and corner. I would say it's deeper at safety than it is at corner by one more spot. So if I had to list them, I would say edge, wide receiver, linebacker, probably safety, and then corner. When it comes to depth,
defensive draft.
Defensive draft. If you need a guy, it's there. I don't know, the top end's there.
I think the last time there was a defensive draft, the first pick was an offensive tackle, and it was Eric Fisher going to the Kansas City Chiefs.
It might be this year too. If it was Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu, I wouldn't be bad pick. I know Eric Fisher didn't quite live up to that first overall sort of.
Hey, he won us the Super Bowl in a sense.
He's still kicking around. He's on the Colts last year, so he's
Where's
still an NFL player.
He's a free agent.
I think he's still a free agent. But moral of the story is here: this draft may not have the high end talent that you want to see, but through the middle, pick 15 through pick 70, Drew, is the sweet spot in this draft, where you're going to get talented guys pretty much through and through, and then after that, it gets real thin. It gets real thin. This is not the draft where you want to have 5 fifth-round picks.
Richard says, unfortunately, this is a weak draft. Most of the first rounders would have been second rounders in the last 5 years. That's the thing that makes this draft so hard to predict.
Can I kick back a little bit? I think we're a little spoiled.
Should.
Last year's draft was so, like, we're going to look back like 10 years from now and be like, man, 2021 was insane, the talent we got.
I think what really, and I talked about this a little bit earlier in the show, what is really hard for a lot of these drafts is you've seen so many quarterbacks get drafted up for that made it seem like there was a lot of talent everywhere else.
Right.
I agree with Richard's predicament in the sense that this might be a weaker draft than most, but I don't think it's so weak that it's like, well, maybe I should just keep trading all my draft picks away until next year. I mean, obviously no team's going to do that because you need to fill roster spots and be able to get under the cap, but there are players out there. There are players under the weeds that no one really knows about. I talked about it in Trey Smith. We talked earlier about Tom Brady. Obviously, we're not expecting a Tom Brady out of this draft, but those late-round draft picks do pan out to be great players and have long careers in the NFL, even though there might not be that, like, oh, my God, have you guys seen this film on this guy? He is going to be the first pick in this draft. You might not have that player. That doesn't mean the rest of the draft's bad. Don't get hyped up with ESPN where they're like, look at all these great players that you got. The first round's going to be littered. This is how I look at it. It's my final words to this whole thing is when it's all said and done, 5 years from now, if you have 5 players that were drafted in the first round still in the NFL, this was a good draft.
Yeah, I could see that. And to my point, I don't think the top end's there. There's not guys that you're like, hey, this is a generational talent. I don't think the bottom end's there. I think you're going to get to the end of the draft and you're like, wow, there's a lot of stinkers here. 5th round kind of stinks. But I think the middle is a sweet spot, and you're going to have a lot of talent. Like you said, long careers, if not superstars, quality contributors. And I can see
Absolutely.
that in the middle of this draft. So be happy if you're picking 15 to 30.
Yeah.
Oh, guys, thank you for sticking with us, man. That was a lot. That was a lot. And I appreciate each and every one of you. It was a lot of tech problems. It was a lot of, like...
I don't know how you didn't have to pee.
I do. Believe me, I do. That beer ran all the way through me.
Guys, I do want to give a quick shout out to everyone that commented. Remember, like, share, comment. It helps us. It helps us grow. Remember to check us out on Facebook. We are on every kind of platform.
We might be back on Twitter. I don't know if you heard. Big news in the Twitter world.
Yeah. Donald Trump bought Twitter.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right.
No, I'm sorry. Joe Biden bought Twitter.
I believe it.
Okay. Anyways, Chris, Nathan, Martavius, Adam, Bees, Frank, Neil, Jeremy, Richard, Chris, Thomas, Frank. Repeating a lot of names, but they're different people. Michael, Ken, Mitchell, Perry. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much.
And to the one guy who watched us on YouTube.
Yeah.
Cheers to you too.
You too, man. You're great. Frank says, Thursday, ?
Well, you should have let me soften him up, Frank. You shouldn't ask anything because I was going to ask him about what we're going to do for that after the draft or after the show. Something on Thursday. I don't know who will be there. I don't know what we're going to be doing. We'll probably be talking about the draft at some point by the end of the week.
I will not be able to handle the first round all the way through because I got to go CPC.
Says the guy going to the Predators game right now.
No, I'm not going.
Yeah, you are.
I said no.
You can still make it.
I'm not going.
Okay. Anyway,
I have to work so early.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Something on Thursday, Frank. I don't know what it's going to be. There'll be something on Thursday. Don't know if it'll be live. Don't know if it'll be recorded. Don't know if it'll be bad. With us, it's a safe bet something's going to happen regardless of the quality. So, with all of that, Drew, any final thoughts? Anything you want to get off your chest here?
Anyone want to give me $1 million? That's all I got.
And mine is, I will see you on Thursday to talk something about the draft. The $1 million wouldn't be bad either. Don't take me out of the running for that. But let me say this. At the very least, I love this time of year. And I'll be here to talk about everything with you. I know Drew will be too. We can't wait to talk about all of that and more as we go forward here. Guys, we're close. So close I can taste it. And I can't wait for it. Thank you for sticking with us. It was a great show. Glad to see all of you. And we will see you again shortly. At the very least next Tuesday. For sure. Shortly.